You know, you're not getting any younger. It's time to have a baby,
Judith declared, treating me like a mere housemaid. Exhausted by her unreasonable demands, I turned to my husband for help.
Okay, let's discuss it on our next day off.
He promised. However, I was excluded from this discussion. What I learned there was shocking. When I confronted my husband, Judith sneered triumphantly.
My son's girlfriend is pregnant. We don't need an infertile parasite like you anymore. Please leave.
Fine by me, I retorted, feeling a mix of relief and resentment. A month later, I received an urgent call from my distressed Judith and husband. Let me introduce myself. My name is Patricia Westfield, a 35-year-old insurance agent. My husband, John, is 31. We met 3 years ago and married last year. Initially, I didn't see my younger, handsome husband as a romantic interest, but his relentless pursuit eventually won me over. Our marriage, especially to a younger, good-looking man, was the envy of many. Despite everything, I was happy, or so I thought. I dreamed of having children and buying our own house someday, but reality often has other plans. It all started with a simple statement from my husband, John.
Mom slipped on the stairs and hurt her back.
He said, a shadow of concern in his voice. Is she okay? I asked, feeling a pang of worry.
Yay, she's fine. But she can go to her part-time job now. And with Dad not working either, I'm just wondering what they're going to do.
He replied, his usual cheerfulness dimmed by the situation. Richard had been battling diabetes for years, and last year his condition worsened, leading to a hospital stay. Though he's back home now, he's unable to continue working. Their livelihood had been reliant on Judith's part-time income and their pension. That's concerning, I remarked, feeling a sense of empathy for their plight. Then came the request that would change our lives. John took my hands in his, looking deeply into my eyes, and said,
Would you consider living with my parents?
I had sensed this might be coming, but hearing the words made me hesitate. I had never heard a positive story about living with in-laws. Moreover, Judith always treated me like I was the thief who stole her precious son, making the thought of living together seem almost impossible. Yet, I couldn't refuse John's plea. All right, I agreed reluctantly. His face lit up with a grateful smile, and he hugged me tightly.
Thank you. Marrying you was the best decision I ever made,
he said, his joy infectious. Despite my apprehensions, I couldn't help but smile, reassuring myself that everything would be fine. However, a month into our new living arrangement, I was already regretting my decision.
Patricia, bring the tea quickly, please.
Judith called out. Yes, right away, I responded, trying to hide my frustration. When I presented the tea, Judith criticized.
This tea is too lukewarm. Can't you do anything right?
I'm sorry, I replied, feeling belittled. Despite Judith's back pain supposedly healing, she showed no interest in returning to her part-time job. Instead, she spent her days lounging around the house, pushing all the household chores onto me. To make matters worse, Richard spent his days consumed by gambling at the local casino and frequently pestered me for money. I tried discussing these issues with John.
They're just frustrated because they can't work. Let's try to be understanding,
he would say, dismissing my concerns. I thought maybe it was just the adjustment period, so I tried to be patient. However, even after 3 more months, the situation didn't improve. It only got worse. One evening, when John came home earlier than usual, I finally voiced my distress. I don't think I can continue living like this, I confessed. Managing the household alone, along with my job, was taking a toll on both my mental and physical health. But John, as always, took my hands, looked into my eyes, and pleaded.
Patricia, I know it's hard, but my parents are struggling too. Can you bear with it a little longer, please?
After hugging me and apologizing for leaving again to meet a colleague, he was out the door. Watching him go, I let out a deep sigh. Ever since we moved in with his parents, John was almost always out, either late due to work drinks or absent on weekends. It felt like I was abandoned in this house, even by my husband, my supposed ally. I reminded myself that this was my choice. To make the best of it, I decided to try harder to win over Judith, but my resolve was quickly shattered. While cleaning the living room one day, Judith cornered me.
You're 35, aren't you? What about having kids?
She asked abruptly. We're thinking about it, I replied, trying to hide my discomfort.
Well, you're not getting any younger. You should get pregnant right now.
She demanded, her words striking me like a harsh command. That day passed, but then it became a daily routine. Judith relentlessly pressured me about getting pregnant, repeating it like a curse. I couldn't take it anymore. One night, as John returned home late as usual, I approached him desperately. "Can you ask your mom to stop pressuring me about having a child?" I pleaded.
Why so sudden?
He asked, startled. "She tells me every day to get pregnant. But with all the housework and my job, I can't even think about having a child right now. And you're hardly ever home. When would we even have the time?" I argued, my frustration evident. "I'm at my limit, please," I pleaded, feeling completely exhausted both physically and emotionally. John gently rubbed my back as I broke down in tears. Then, with a brief, mischievous smile, he spoke.
Okay, I'll talk to Mom about it on my next day off.
"Really? And can you ask her to share some of the household chores?" I asked, a flicker of hope in my voice.
About that,
John said, introducing a surprising proposal.
what do you think about building a duplex house?
I was taken aback by the sudden suggestion, but John explained gently.
You know, the problem now is that we're too close to each other. If we live in a duplex, we can separate our living spaces. You know, one family on each floor. That way, we won't have to see each other all the time.
It sounded logical. If we had our own spaces, perhaps Judith would at least take care of her own room. I nodded in agreement, but then remembered the financial implications. But building a duplex must be expensive, right? I asked. John held my hand and looked into my eyes, and I understood what was coming.
I have a favor to ask. Patricia, you have some savings from before we got married, right? Could we use that for the down payment?
Indeed, having never planned to marry, I had saved diligently for my future, amassing 15 million yen. After marriage, our expenses increased, and I hadn't been able to save much, so I'd thought to reserve this money for when we had children. I hesitated to agree immediately, but John insisted he would take out a loan for the rest and promised to work harder. Physically and emotionally drained, I couldn't think straight and ultimately gave in to his persuasion.
Thank you, Patricia. I'll talk to them about it on my day off,
John said with a smile. Despite my apprehensions, I hoped this might lead to a better situation. On the next day off, as promised, John set out to discuss the matter with his parents. He suggested I stay away during the conversation, fearing my presence might provoke Judith. So, I decided to kill time at a nearby cafe. After a while, I checked the time on the cafe's clock. An hour had passed since I left home. Thinking it might be time to hear from John, I reached for my phone, only to realize with a start I had left it at home. Rushing back home with the thought that John might have already tried to contact me, I entered quietly, considering the possibility that their discussion might still be ongoing. To my surprise, I noticed a pair of unfamiliar women's shoes in the entranceway, which struck me as odd, but I quietly proceeded inside. Hearing voices from the living room, I assumed the discussion was still in progress. As I tiptoed towards the stairs to my room, trying not to make a sound, a phrase from the conversation stopped me in my tracks.
Truly, congratulations. I'm so happy for you.
Once we build a house and divorce her, everything will be perfect.
Their words hit me like a sledgehammer. Divorce? Had I heard that right? Hiding nearby, I listened in shock to the unfolding conversation.
It always seemed strange to me. John marrying someone older like that.
It's all about the money. She had a good amount saved up. And if you hold her hand and look into her eyes, she believes anything.
That's why you didn't have kids with her.
I wouldn't want kids with someone with such an unlucky face. But with Jennifer, our kids will definitely be beautiful.
The conversation revealed a horrifying truth that nearly brought me to my knees. It was all a lie. John had married me for my money, was having an affair, and even had a child with another woman. And now, he planned to use my savings to build a house for himself and his mistress. His recent absences were likely visits to her. Containing my rising anger, I quietly retrieved my phone from my room and left the house. My next destination was clear a detective agency. I needed evidence of John's infidelity. The hand that John used to hold was now clenched in fury, and the eyes he used to gaze into were burning with rage. As I walked towards the agency, I vowed revenge against them both. A month had passed since that fateful day of the meeting, and I had gathered enough evidence of the affair. Just as I was contemplating when to confront them, I was called by my husband and in-laws for a discussion. In the living room, I found a pile of custom home magazines on the table.
We were thinking it's time to discuss building our new house.
They said cheerfully, picking out their dream homes. I looked at them with icy detachment and stated flatly, I'm not building any house. My husband was visibly shocked, and Judith instantly became irate.
What are you talking about?
She snapped. I said, I am not building a house. I reiterated firmly. My husband, confused and startled, was about to protest when I slammed the evidence of his affair on the table. I know about your affair. Jennifer, right? She's already in her second trimester, I declared. The color drained from his face, but Judith scoffed and yelled at me.
Well, if you know, then it's easier. John's girlfriend is pregnant. You infertile parasite, get out.
Mother, wait.
John started, but I cut him off, loudly. I'll leave. I handed him the divorce papers I had signed. Sign these now. I will submit them to the registry office. John hesitated, pale-faced, muttering about losing the money. But Judith pushed him.
No worries, we'll manage with your income. Sign it now. We don't want to see this parasite's face anymore.
Resigned, John signed the papers. I took them, grabbed my pre-packed bags, and left the house. I immediately went to the registry office and submitted the divorce papers, gaining my freedom. A month later, my ex-husband called me repeatedly. Reluctantly, I answered, only to be greeted by my furious former Judith.
What's the meaning of this?
She shouted. What are you talking about? I asked calmly.
We have no money.
She exclaimed. I sighed, unable to hold it back.
John only earns 170,000 yen. We can't even pay for utilities and phone bills.
That made sense, as I had been the one supporting their household. John had contributed only 50,000 yen for living expenses, assuming his parents' home would cover the rest. Judith used her pension for personal entertainment and never contributed financially, leaving me to shoulder the expenses alone. Even my salary wasn't enough, and we had been using our savings to get by. When I explained this, she screamed even louder.
Why is John's salary so low? He works for a major automotive company.
No, he works as a factory staff for an auto parts manufacturer. I corrected her. Her dumbfounded voice rang through the phone. Apparently, John had lied about his job and income. That's why she had been so confident in kicking me out.
I'm sorry, please come back. Richard gambled away the house as collateral for a loan, and now we might be kicked out.
My former Judith pleaded over the phone. I was stunned to learn that Richard had resorted to gambling away everything after losing access to my funds. Apparently, all the money was gone.
Use your savings to pay off the debts.
She demanded. That was the last straw for me. Don't be ridiculous. After you unilaterally kicked me out, you expect me to bail you out? I retorted, raising my voice for the first time.
Patricia, please help us. We're going to be homeless.
My ex-husband, now on the phone, pleaded in a sweet tone, but it only made me feel nauseous. Enough. It's not my problem anymore what happens to you, I said firmly.
But, wait. The property division should give me half of your money.
He argued desperately. Sorry, but the money I have was saved before we got married. It's not part of the property division. I informed him. The call ended with them still protesting. I informed them that they would soon receive a demand for alimony, 3 million yen from my ex-husband and 1.5 million yen from his mistress. The mistress's parents paid off her debt immediately, but my ex-husband agreed to a payment plan. Later, I heard from neighbors that they couldn't repay the debts and lost the house. Now, the three of them were living in an internet cafe. My former Judith had resumed working part-time, but whatever she earned, along with her pension, was gambled away by Richard. This led to a huge commotion in the internet cafe, involving the police. My ex-husband, unable to remarry due to opposition from the mistress's parents and burdened with the care of his problematic parents, ended up with a stress-induced ulcer. As for me, I moved back to my parents' house for a while after leaving my in-laws' home. Eventually, I found a great place and moved out, embracing a future that was vastly different from what I had envisioned. Now, I am enjoying living alone and looking forward to living my life on my own terms.
I've fallen in love with someone who isn't you, and I don't want my son anymore.
These shocking words came from my husband, William, who had always boasted about being a hands-on dad. I was stunned and astonished, but he just kept coming up with inexplicable excuses. My mother-in-law, noticing my silence, did not even admonish my husband. Instead, she turned to me, cold and unwavering, and said,
"Get a divorce. Leave this house immediately."
she was ready to cast out not just me but my kid as well. In the midst of this turmoil, I was reminded that for every hardship, there's a glimmer of hope, a helping hand waiting to lift me up. My name is Barbara, and I am a stay-at-home mom with a 6-year-old child. My husband, William, works in a family-owned business with his parents. It's a small company, but they seem to be always busy, often returning home past 8 p.m. I met William during my early career days, after graduating from college. It was at a mixer party, where a friend begged me to come along because they were short on women. Ironically, William was there for a similar reason: they were short on men. We were both there just to fill numbers, which strangely took the pressure off, making it easier for us to connect. While the other partygoers were getting excited about heading to a second location, I decided to leave, thinking I had served my role. Surprisingly, William, also a filler like me, chose not to join the after-party and instead headed home. We ended up walking together to the nearby station, sharing light-hearted banter about the evening. It was easy talking to him, with neither of us feeling the need to impress the other. As we parted ways at the train, he asked for my contact detail. I enjoyed talking to him so much that I gladly exchanged contact information with him. Our casual friendship blossomed from there, and before we knew it, we were dating. After 2 years of a loving relationship, we decided to tie the knot. Everything felt perfect. William and I had a great relationship, and his parents welcomed me with open arms when I first met them. I had lost my parents in an accident shortly after starting my career, and when William's parents heard about it, they were incredibly supportive, telling me to think of them as my second parents. Our life together seemed like a dream. Little did I know, it was about to take a turn I never expected. After getting married to William, I found myself getting involved in the family business he and his parents were running, leading us to embark on a life in a 2-family household with them. This new chapter was not just about living together. It was an opportunity to forge a deeper bond with my in-laws, who were also integral to our joint business venture. At first, I braced myself for the expectation of contributing to the business. But William had other thoughts. He said to me,
"Barbara, you married into this family, and I don't want to burden you with work. Just being there waiting for us at home is more than enough."
His words assigned me a new role, that of a devoted homemaker, dedicating myself to the well-being of our household without the pressures of external work. Adhering to this new role, my days morphed into a series of routines, eagerly awaiting the return of my in-laws and husband from their daily endeavors. A year into this harmonious marital journey, our lives were graced by the arrival of a vibrant baby boy. We named him Noah, a beacon of new happiness and a source of boundless energy in our household. Life seemed to be cruising along seamlessly, surrounded by a gentle and caring husband, supportive in-laws, and a charming son. My heart was filled with gratitude. I embraced my identity as a member of this loving family, nurturing the bonds that tied us together. In my heart, I was convinced that this path would lead me to enduring happiness. Amidst these blissful times, there lurked an impending event, a twist of fate unbeknownst to me, poised to steer our lives onto a path of unexpected turns and challenges. My feelings of discomfort with my life at my in-laws started in an unexpected place at a reunion of my middle school friends. Heading back to my hometown for the event, I was filled with excitement at the prospect of reuniting with old friends, people with whom I had shared countless childhood memories. As we delved into tales of the past, the air was thick with laughter and nostalgia. Amidst this warm ambience, Stefan, a childhood friend who had been my neighbor since birth until my parents passed away, approached me. Our relationship had always been akin to that of siblings, and we still occasionally kept in touch. a bond of trust and familiarity between us. In the midst of our conversation, Stefan casually inquired,
Barbara, the family you married into, they run their own business, right? What was the company's name again?
I remembered talking to my husband, William, about inviting Stefan to our wedding. I had explained to William, Stefan and I grew up like siblings, without any romantic feelings. He knew my parents well, and I really want him to be there on our big day. To which William had kindly responded,
If he's important to you, Barbara, he's important to me as well.
Prior to our wedding, William and Stefan had a chance to meet in the groom's waiting room, where they both seemed to have formed a positive impression of each other. When I mentioned the name of the company run by William's parents to Stefan, he uttered a thoughtful,
I see.
And fell into deep contemplation, resting his chin on his hand. His expression carried a sense of revelation mixed with a tangle of complicated feelings. What's going on? Is there something about my family's company that's bothering you? I asked Stefan, but he simply shook his head and answered,
No, it was just something I was curious about. I don't think it's anything for Barbara to worry about.
He didn't elaborate on what had piqued his interest, leaving me with an unsettled feeling. During the reunion, as lively and engaging as it was, I attempted to probe further, but our conversation was continuously interrupted by other classmates, preventing any in-depth discussion about my family's business. The reunion itself was a delightful affair, but as I lay in bed that night, Stefan's vague comments haunted me. Knowing that he works as a management consultant, his words triggered worries in me. Could there be underlying issues with the family business run by my husband William and my in-laws that I wasn't aware of? Since I embraced my role as a homemaker, I hadn't been actively involved or concerned about business affairs. But now, Stefan's inquiry led me to wonder if there were potential problems like financial instability. Lying awake, my mind was racing with all sorts of thoughts and concerns. The following morning, my weariness was evident enough for my son Noah to notice. He looked at me with concern and asked,
Mom, are you okay?
I assured him that I was fine, but internally, I was making a firm decision to be more observant. This incident marked a turning point where I began to perceive subtle changes in the attitudes of William and my in-laws. Changes that I hadn't noticed before. A shift from how things were at the beginning of our marriage. At the start of our marriage, William and I settled into a two-family house, with us in the smaller unit and my in-laws Betty and Richard in the main part. Though we lived under the same roof, each household managed its chores independently. Cooking, laundry, and cleaning were all separate. Initially, Betty seemed somewhat relieved not having to do chores for William anymore. However, 3 years into our marriage, Betty's calls during my work hours became more frequent, asking,
Hello, Barbara? I'm really tired today. Could you handle dinner tonight?
I initially welcomed the task, sympathizing with her juggling work and household duties. But gradually, her requests for me to prepare dinner increased, eventually becoming a routine on weekdays. Then I thought there was no need to separate the parent household and us to eat separately. However, Barbara stubbornly refused to sit at the table with us, saying,
The table feels too small, so you guys eat on your side.
It was cumbersome to prepare additional pots for their household, and gradually, Betty's expressions of gratitude ceased. Reflecting on this, I started to sense something was off. I had been preoccupied with childcare and housework, naively believing in the kindness of my in-laws, and that it equated to a happy family life. However, once doubts crept in, several incidents began to seem suspicious. Example, William consistently came home later than his parents. When I inquired about it, they would vaguely mention,
William has specific tasks that only he can handle,
but never provided any concrete details. Since this year began, I've noticed that William often comes home separately from his parents, and sometimes he returns well past midnight. What really strikes me as odd is when William's relatives and friends occasionally visit us. They all uniformly comment,
William is such an engaged father.
Barbara, you're so fortunate.
True, William has always shown affection towards our son Noah, and he would sometimes take over the bottle feeding when Noah was an infant. On weekends, he would play with Noah, supposedly giving me a break from my duties. Yet, William's involvement feels merely superficial. It was always me who prepared the milk, and whenever Noah cried while I was busy with chores, William never stepped in to change his diaper, make his milk, or comfort him. He would simply call out for me to handle it. Nowadays, it's me who purchases what Noah needs, assists him with his studies, and teaches him to clean up. William, after playing, would just leave everything as it is, instructing Noah to tidy up and then turning his attention to his smartphone. This hardly aligns with the image of a hands-on dad. Intrigued, I subtly asked one of William's relatives during a weekend visit, "How did you know about William being so involved in childcare?" They showed me William's social media posts, which painted a picture of him as the primary caretaker with captions like,
"Dad's duty to play with the kid. Boys bond better."
and
"Mom is busy with house chores again today."
these posts nearly suggested I wasn't participating in parenting at all. Despite feeling irked by this portrayal, I couldn't help but feel a sense of alarm at the facade he was maintaining on social media. The reason why I started to fear William's social media presence was because of a post he made on a night he returned home late. His post boasted about having dinner with our son Noah, describing how adorable he looked with breadcrumb on his mouth. However, in reality, William wasn't home at that time. Once, when William's relatives visited, they casually remarked,
"Barbara, I know you're busy with house chores, but you've got to keep an eye on the child too."
laughing as they said it. I couldn't muster a laugh. My mind was far from finding any humor. Why is he posting about having dinner with Noah when he didn't return until after midnight? It's unsettling, I muttered under my breath. Hearing my comment, the relative who showed me William's social media seemed taken aback. Unable to bear staying in the house, I took Noah and headed to the nearby supermarket, feeling like I would lose my mind if I stayed. About a month later, William called me to the main family side of the house. There sat his parents, Betty and Richard, with stern faces, while William wore a smug smile. Confused by their contrasting expressions, I sat down. William began,
"What I'm about to say might sound harsh, but I've made my decision. I've fallen in love with someone else. I don't need the child either."
"Someone else?" I echoed, shocked.
"Yes,
William continued with an almost joyous tone.
like you have a childhood friend, I have one too. She had been living abroad married, but now she's divorced and back in Japan. We reconnected recently, and I realized I want to marry her."
Throughout the conversation, William's face radiated happiness, leaving me completely baffled. "Wait, so you've always loved this other woman, but you married me?" I asked, trying to grasp the situation.
"Well, she was abroad and married at the time. When I thought I should just get married too, I met you, Barbara."
He explained casually. "What about Noah? What will happen to him?" I asked, recalling his earlier statement about not needing our son. William had always shown affection towards Noah, even if it was superficial. The thought of a man who boasted about being a hands-on dad on social media abandoning his own son seemed inconceivable. Yet, William nonchalantly replied,
"I think I can only love a child with the woman I love. Besides, Noah would be in the way when I marry her."
I was stunned. Not only did he say he didn't need his son, but he also considered Noah a hindrance to his new relationship. Did he ever truly feel like Noah's father? I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't find the words to respond. Seeing my silence, Betty, my mother-in-law, not even bothering to reprimand her son for his shameless declaration, harshly told me to leave the house within a week. I was in shock. Noah noticed my distress and asked if I was okay. "I'm not sure I am," I admitted, hugging him as tears began to fall. Just then, my childhood friend Stefan called. Sensing my distress, he asked,
What happened? Why are you crying?
I broke down and told him everything about William's affair, his rejection of Noah, and Betty's ultimatum. Stefan murmured.
No, I am too late.
His voice carried a tone of regret and concern that only deepened my sense of despair. What did he mean by too late? I yearned to uncover the hidden meaning behind these words. Stefan then told me to visit a specific location, his sister Elizabeth's office. Elizabeth and I have been close since our childhood, akin to real sisters for me. Although our interactions had waned since I got married, if I ever needed to turn to someone, it would unquestionably be her and Stefan. So, with my son Noah, I headed to Elizabeth's. Upon arriving at her office, Elizabeth presented me with crucial evidence.
Barbara seemed genuinely happy, so neither Stefan nor I were worried initially.
She began, evoking memories of blissful days now distant. However, her tone soon grew somber.
But, about 6 months ago, Stefan saw Barbara's husband, William, leaving the office arm in arm with another woman.
Her words sent a chill through my heart.
Since then, we've been investigating them.
She continued, her voice heavy with reluctance. Initially, I had naively believed that when William said he had fallen for someone, it merely meant he fancied someone who had returned to America after a divorce, presuming there was no actual affair yet. But the truth was different. William was already in a relationship with that woman. Had I remained oblivious and accepted the divorce, he would have led a happy life with his mistress, leaving me without any compensation for his infidelity. Rage simmered within me. Moreover, I realized that Stefan's inquiry about William's company during the reunion was to confirm if the man he had seen was indeed my husband.
Thank you for the evidence. I can never forgive William,
I said, clutching the proofs as I brought them home. There, I found William's father, Richard. I had thought of Richard as an enemy since he was present at William's confession. But to my surprise, he apologized with a bowed head, saying,
"I'm sorry."
Astonishingly, Richard was on my and my son Noah's side. He explained that he remained silent because, despite his pleas, William and his mother, Betty, continued the affair, and he felt powerless to stop it.
"I started to suspect something a year ago. William would stay late at the office, claiming overtime. Though there wasn't much work, Betty would casually accept this and take me home, leaving William behind. Wondering what was happening, I decided to install a surveillance camera in the car a month ago. As a result, I found out that William was meeting his mistress, Ashley, in his office under the guise of working late."
Richard recounted. Ever since Stefan and Elizabeth informed me of William's affair, I suspected his late returns were due to secret meetings with Ashley. But I never imagined they were happening at his workplace. Betty, who sided with William and urged for a divorce, must have been an accomplice. Perhaps she thought Ashley, William's childhood friend, was more suitable for him, and thus aided William.
"Feel free to use the footage from the surveillance camera as evidence. And don't just stay in this house for a week. Stay until you find a new place. I'm on your and my grandson's side,"
Richard assured me, bringing tears to my eyes. Following that, things progressed swiftly. Richard confronted Betty and William.
"Don't ever enter Barbara's house. You've done the lowest things to Barbara and Noah. It's too much to take away their home and then tell them to leave."
He ensured they couldn't bother us anymore. I blocked any contact from Betty and William for a while and methodically prepared for the alimony claim and the moving process. Facing the reality of becoming a single mother, I knew I had to find a job. However, Elizabeth, Stefan's sister, came forward with an unexpected offer.
"Barbara, you have qualifications and you worked before marriage, right? I was thinking of hiring you after someone quit his job to move back to the countryside,"
she said, extending a welcoming hand to me. With my job concerns alleviated, Richard, William's father, stepped in to help with the down payment for a new place to live.
"I'm sorry I couldn't stop my wife and son from their actions. Let me pay for this."
He offered generously. On the day of the move, I visited William's family home for the first time in a long while and confronted William.
Today, I'm leaving this house. But before I do, I'm going to demand alimony for your affair and a lump sum for Noah's child support.
William tried to escape the situation, exclaiming,
What? Affair? Are you accusing me of cheating just because I have someone I like?
I laid out the photographs on the table, revealing his daily weekday meetings with Ashley, his childhood friend. Seeing the evidence, William and Betty turned pale, realizing everything was out in the open.
You're such a liar. I don't want you calling yourself Noah's father anymore. And since I can't trust you to pay child support regularly, I want it in a lump sum,
I declared firmly. William protested.
Why? You think I can be trusted?
I shrugged in disbelief.
You're a liar who pretends to be involved in parenting on social media but doesn't lift a finger at home. You cheated while I was away and then lied about having a girlfriend to cover it up. How can I trust someone like you? It's impossible.
At a loss for words, William was speechless. Richard, standing beside him, sternly said,
You did have done something irreparable. The only thing you can do now is make amends.
Despite their unwilling faces, I firmly stated,
If you have something to say, communicate through my lawyer. I won't be taking any direct contact from you.
With that, I swiftly left the scene, ready to start anew. Afterwards, I also demanded alimony from William's mistress, Ashley. Apparently, she had been abandoned and divorced by her husband because she had been constantly in touch with William while neglecting her own family abroad. Ashley, seemingly influenced by William and Betty's instructions, absurdly claimed,
We haven't even confessed to each other yet. It's free to fall in love, isn't it? I've done no cheating.
However, I silenced her with photographic and video evidence. Her parents ended up paying her alimony, and William handed over all his savings to me. Reflecting on it, William managed our finances, and the significant savings were likely because he spent little on Noah and me, saving instead for a future marriage with Ashley. Seeing through his intentions, I developed a visceral repulsion towards him. Previously admired by friends and relatives, William's true nature was exposed through the divorce and child custody abandonment, leading to estrangement. Richard, upon confirming that William had paid the alimony and child support, closed his business, handed divorce papers to Betty, and sold their house. Betty and William, now ousted from their home, have reportedly moved into Ashley's parents' house, where they are unwelcome. It seems inevitable that Ashley will also be cast out soon, penniless. As for me, I now live a peaceful life in a condo with Noah. Occasionally, Stefan and Elizabeth kindly take care of Noah, which has been a great help. Noah has grown fond of them, recently remarking with a smile,
They feel more like family than Ad ever did.
In the soft glow of the early morning sun, I stood in the modest, well-worn kitchen of my suburban American home, my arms crossed defiantly. The tension in the air was palpable, a brewing storm of emotions about to erupt. I faced my mother-in-law, Susan, a stern woman with sharp features, who had always held a tight rein over the household.
Really, Amanda? How long do you plan on making this your castle? What about moving out? Stop dawdling and leave already.
Susan's voice, laced with irritation and a hint of disdain, echoed in the kitchen. Unaware of the dramatic turn of events about to unfold, she had been pressuring me to leave the house, a place I never felt belonged to me. In truth, I wasn't surprised. Susan's world revolved around her only son, Joshua, my husband. The bond between them was unmistakable, a mother's fierce love for her child. I myself had long grown weary of this stifling atmosphere, the constant tug-of-war of emotions. Being told to leave was almost a relief, a release from the chains of domestic strife. So, with a mixture of defiance and liberation swelling in my chest, I retorted, I'll be out in 2 hours. Don't you worry. My words were a declaration of independence, a final stand against the oppressive environment I had endured. As I stepped into the moving truck, my belongings neatly packed, I caught a glimpse of Susan's face. A look of surprise, a soft,
Oh,
escaped Susan's lips, but for me, it was of no consequence. This wasn't a story of being cast out. It was a tale of empowerment. I wasn't just leaving a house. I was leaving behind a life that no longer served me, including my husband Joshua and his parents. My name is Amanda, a 28-year-old working homemaker living the suburban American dream. My marriage with Joshua, now in its 4th blissful year, has been a journey of love and learning. We haven't been blessed with children yet, but it's not a concern. Doctors assure us of natural conception when the time is right. For now, we're content to wait, enjoying each day as it comes. Our story began back in college, where Joshua was the amiable senior everyone admired. I, the quiet girl in the corner, fell for him hard and fast. It was his kind-hearted nature that drew me in, and soon enough, Joshua noticed my silent adoration. He liked my reserved charm, and during a cozy dinner date, he confessed his feelings, marking the start of our beautiful relationship. We've always been the kind that respects each other's space, which meant our relationship sailed smoothly, free from the usual tempests of quarrels and misunderstandings. Seeing Joshua transition from a college student to a working professional was like watching a flower bloom and fast forward, his maturity and newfound adult demeanor only adding to his appeal. Inspired by him, I too hustled to carve my own path in the corporate world.
Wow, Amanda, you're amazing. You landed a job at a major company. With your salary, we're set for life.
Joshua's words, while celebratory, left a slight unease in me. It seemed like he was more focused on the financial aspect rather than my achievement. Just my earnings? I questioned, a hint of skepticism in my voice. His response caught me off guard.
You know, I've been thinking about being a stay-at-home dad. It's all the rage now, right? The whole modern father thing.
His casual tone couldn't mask the seriousness of his words. Well, sure, it's trendy, but raising kids is expensive. We'll need to save up, I replied, trying to steer the conversation toward practicality. His idea, though modern, left a myriad of question marks floating in my mind. Our relationship, like a smoothly flowing river, continued without major upheavals. Both our circle of friends and our families warmly acknowledged our bond, almost certain of a wedding in the horizon. Their supportive gaze felt like a comforting blanket wrapping around our growing love. When I turned 24, working my 2nd year in the professional world, Joshua surprised me with a proposal. It happened in a fancy restaurant with a breathtaking cityscape view. He presented it with such grandeur, a beautiful bouquet of flowers, and a stunning ring, all under the watchful eyes of an intrigued audience.
Will you marry me, Amanda? I promise to make you the happiest woman in the world,
he said, his voice resonating with love and commitment. The entire room seemed to pause, awaiting my response. How could I say anything but yes? Yes, I'd love to, I replied. The room erupted into applause, a symphony of happiness and celebration for our future together. Our marriage plans proceeded swiftly, though we decided to register our union first, delaying the ceremony due to our busy careers. I was never one for big weddings, but Joshua's parents, especially his mother, Susan, seemed particularly excited. However, it was during this period that I began to sense a change in Susan's attitude towards me. Initially, she appeared overjoyed, but soon her true feelings surfaced.
Why did Joshua have to marry someone so plain? I thought they'd break up, but to think they actually got married.
Susan lamented, her words like daggers to my heart. I was stunned, unable to fathom such cruelty from her. I had always known her to cherish Joshua immensely, but I never expected such harshness. And she was cunning, careful to mask her true feelings in Joshua's presence. In front of him, she played the doting mother-in-law, but when we were alone, her demeanor changed drastically. She would transform, her gaze turning cold and her words laced with sarcasm. It became evident that she was not the loving figure I had thought her to be. 3 months into our marriage, I had fully grasped the extent of Susan's duplicity. Just when I thought my situation couldn't get any worse, fate threw an unbelievable curveball my way. One day, as I returned home, Joshua greeted me with a solemn expression, his words heavy with concern.
There's something I need to talk to you about. My mom called today, and it seems her chronic back pain has worsened. She's struggling with daily chores and is in a lot of pain. She's asking if we could consider moving in with her.
I was dumbfounded, barely able to process his words. The thought of living with Susan, who had been nothing but unkind to me, was unthinkable. I had never seen any indication of her suffering from back pain. She seemed more vibrant and capable than her years suggested. In fact, I had been planning to discuss with Joshua the possibility of us moving farther away from his parents' house, but now that option seemed off the table. But I have my job too, and moving in together could be really challenging. I responded hesitantly, my mind racing with the implications of such a decision. My workplace is already demanding enough. Joshua, however, was resolute.
I can't just leave my mom like this. You know how my dad is. He's no help around the house. Plus, think about the money we could save on rent by living together.
Despite my staunch opposition, Joshua eventually persuaded me, and I found myself reluctantly agreeing to the living arrangement. It felt like falling right into Susan's trap. In no time, Joshua, more enthusiastic than ever, began packing for the move. The speed at which everything was decided and organized by Joshua was startling. He seemed almost too eager, as if this had been a long-awaited opportunity. Meanwhile, I was left grappling with a mixture of emotions, anxiety, frustration, and a sense of impending doom.
Well, I never thought I'd be living back at my parents' house at this age, but hey, think of the savings on rent. That means more spending money for me, right? Plus, we can build up our savings. It's a win-win situation.
Joshua remarked with a chuckle, seemingly oblivious to the complexities of our impending living situation. I'm not so sure about that, I replied, my voice tinged with doubt and apprehension. The idea of saving on rent and building our savings was enticing, but it felt frivolous when weighed against the reality of living with his parents, especially his mother, Susan. One thing I'd come to realize since moving in was Joshua's unchanged and reckless spending habits from his college days. He had a flair for fashion and a need to keep up with the latest trends, which often led to impulsive purchases. His financial prudence seemed to have deteriorated over the years, only adding to the stress of our new living arrangement. As expected, the bulk of the domestic challenges fell squarely on my shoulders, while Joshua enjoyed his carefree days. I had yet to see any sign of Susan's alleged debilitating back pain. She spent hours gossiping with neighbors and frequently went out for lunches, dressed to the nines. And whenever she had the chance, she never missed an opportunity to throw a snide remark my way.
It's great to live with Joshua again, but there's one nuisance in the house. If I think of you as a maid, it's bearable, but just seeing you irks me,
Susan would say, her words dripping with contempt. All I could do was sigh in response to her petty comments. I'm sure she took my silence as insolence, but I was tired of letting her words go unchallenged. I had even brought up my concerns to Joshua. Listen, Joshua, your mom is definitely not in pain. She was out with friends today, and I saw her moving up and down the stairs effortlessly. Why are we even living together? Your dad just follows whatever she says. I vented my frustrations to him, but Joshua never took my concerns seriously.
Seriously, Amanda, when did you become so bitter and sarcastic? We're living here thanks to my parents, and you think you can just say whatever you want. You married into this family, so helping out with my parents should be a given.
Joshua retorted dismissively whenever I tried to express my concerns. He never took my side. Instead, if I dared to voice an opinion, Joshua would immediately jump to his mother's defense.
Stop harassing my mom. I won't forgive you if you mistreat her.
He would warn me. Our relationship deteriorated with each passing day, the once light-hearted and loving conversations now a thing of the past. In this strained atmosphere, the thought of starting a family seemed more distant than ever. Susan, well aware of the growing rift between Joshua and me, didn't hesitate to add fuel to the fire.
When will I get to see my grandchildren? All my friends have grandkids and talk about them all the time. It's just me who can't join in their conversations,
she would lament, as if blaming me for our childless state. She didn't stop there. She would insinuate that my work was getting in the way of starting a family, or that I wasn't feminine enough for Joshua to see me as a woman. Her words were so absurd that I often found myself speechless. But I couldn't just let her comments slide. I guess having kids might be tough since Joshua and I argue all the time now. I'd reply, not wanting to show any weakness to her. I was determined not to let Susan win. Despite my busy work life, I found myself burdened with all the household chores at my in-laws' house, leaving me exhausted every day. To avoid further conflicts, I started keeping conversations with Joshua to the bare minimum, resorting to neutral, non-confrontational exchanges. Our relationship as a couple had become dysfunctional, a mere shadow of what it once was. Adding to this, Joshua's return home started to stretch past midnight almost every day, often citing overtime or social gatherings as reasons. Recently, you've been coming home really late. Is there a new project at work? I ventured to ask one evening, only to be met with his fiery anger.
Are you questioning me, the man of the house, who works hard for this family? What's wrong with being busy at work?
He retorted, his face turning red with indignation. Susan invariably intervened in these exchanges, chastising me for even hinting a distrust towards Joshua.
Why would you say such things, Amanda? It's because of this attitude that Joshua is drifting away from you. Don't forget that you're his wife and our daughter-in-law.
She would lecture at length, turning the situation into a habitual pattern. But my questions to Joshua weren't without reason. 2 weeks ago, an unsettling truth came to light. After a late night at work, I stopped by a ramen shop, craving something hearty. As I hurriedly finished my meal, thinking of the chores awaiting me at home, I saw Joshua walking arm in arm with a much younger woman. I was so stunned that I missed the opportunity to capture any evidence, leaving me to stew in uncertainty and discomfort since then. I had sensed something was off, but seeing it with my own eyes was a different matter. I've since resigned myself to this reality, accepting it as an inevitable part of our strained relationship. Despite my inner turmoil, Susan seemed eager for me to leave the house, frequently bringing up divorce talks with Joshua.
Oh, how tiresome and annoying. When will you finally leave? I can't stand having you around.
She often complained. Initially, she was discreet in her disdain for me, but now she openly expressed her contempt. Of course, I never planned to stay in this situation forever. I was just waiting for the right evidence to make my move. Then, a week later on a weekend, I received the news I had been waiting for. The detective agency had gathered conclusive evidence of Joshua's infidelity. This was the moment I had been anticipating. Oblivious to what was about to unfold, Susan continued to urge me to leave the house.
Really? When will you pack up and leave? Why are you dragging your feet? Get out already.
Susan railed against me, unaware of the imminent change. In her eyes, Joshua, her only son, could do no wrong. Honestly, I was relieved at the prospect of leaving this life behind. So, I informed her of my decision. I'll be out in 2 hours, don't worry.
Oh, finally decided to leave, have you? I couldn't be happier. I must tell Joshua right away.
Susan exclaimed, almost gleefully. Joshua, who had come home past 1 in the morning and was off today, was sound asleep in the bedroom. True to my word, I was ready to leave. Energetically, Susan woke Joshua up to share the news, her excitement palpable.
Can't you see, Joshua? Amanda's finally leaving our house.
She exclaimed gleefully.
What? Leaving the house? Where are you going? I haven't heard anything about this. What's going on?
Joshua asked, rubbing his sleepy eyes, visibly surprised. Well, I've decided to divorce you, Joshua. You know why, don't you? I said with a sly smile. Joshua's face paled as he slowly realized the gravity of the situation. Let's handle the details through our lawyers from now on. I don't ever want to see you or your malicious mother again, I declared. Enraged, Susan lashed out.
What an impertinent daughter-in-law. You hardly do any housework and can't even bear a child. Are you even worthy of being called a woman?
I was indifferent to her harsh words. If anything, I was relieved I hadn't brought a child into such a toxic environment. And at 28, I knew life offered me plenty of opportunities for a fresh start. Then came the day of my departure, marked by the arrival of the moving truck. Once the movers had transferred all my belongings, I climbed into the truck and turned to Joshua and Susan, ready to have the last word. To the low-income cheater, I'll be claiming plenty of alimony, so don't even think of running away, I said with a final wave. Goodbye now. Susan could only muster a puzzled,
Hey.
But her reaction no longer mattered to me. I wasn't the one being kicked out. I was the one leaving a foolish husband and a spiteful mother-in-law behind. A few days later, an agitated Susan called me. It was obvious Joshua was there with her.
Amanda, what is this about? We received a letter from your lawyer talking about alimony. What's this all about?
It's exactly what it sounds like. I replied coolly. It seems your son has been cheating with a junior colleague from his company since before our marriage. So, yes, I'm seeking a divorce and alimony. Oh, and the other woman, she's also married with children. I wonder how that's going for her. It turned out Joshua had been involved with his colleague for years. I had sent plenty of photographic evidence of their hotel rendezvous and intimate moments at work, leaving Susan utterly confused and overwhelmed. It's hard for a mother to accept that her son has been unfaithfully involved in an affair for years, especially while married. But he managed to cheat quite well, right? Even though he only received a salary of 120,000 yen per month. Well, I guess she was also just playing around completely, huh? I think not just from me, but you also received contact from her husband. I made sure to report everything properly, you know? Her voice was completely trembling, and she seemed at a loss for words, just standing there in stunned silence, like she didn't know what to say.
Isn't there anything that can be done? Can't you at least withdraw the compensation claim?
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Amanda, can't we just forget about the alimony? I'll do anything, even if it means you coming back to this house. Please, Amanda.
Hearing his words, I realized how much love had cooled. Why should I, the wronged party, forego the alimony? It's him who should be making amends. Joshua, I always thought you were a bit dense, but I never knew you were this terrible. I said, half amused, half disgusted. I won't be withdrawing the alimony claim. This is the consequence of your actions. Despite his pleas and various conditions, I ignored them all. I had no more time to waste on a relationship that was built on lies and betrayal. I was ready to move on and start anew.
Let's keep it civil, for the sake of our past as a married couple.
He suggested, desperation in his voice. I couldn't help but laugh. Civil, Joshua, I've already filed a report with your company. If you fail to pay the alimony, I'll have your wages garnished, I declared confidently. His face fell. He had always been more concerned with appearances than facing his wrongdoings. He blurted out in panic.
You can't do that. It's defamation of character. I'll sue you.
His threat was almost laughable. Defamation? If anyone's character has been defamed, it's mine. But don't worry, I'll take appropriate action if you don't comply with the court's orders. By now, Joshua's pleas turned to desperate apologies, but I had already hung up. There was no chance I would reverse the alimony claim, nor would I ever consider returning to that house of deceit. In the end, I received a total of 4.5 million yen in alimony from Joshua and his mistress. Surprisingly, Joshua managed to pay off the entire settlement at once, a fact that bewildered me. However, I later discovered that his father, upon learning of the entire fiasco, was furiously livid.
What a despicable act you both have committed.
He roared so loudly that even the neighbors could hear. It turned out Joshua's father had paid the alimony on his behalf and was now strictly managing Joshua's monthly earnings to repay the debt. Meanwhile, the mistress's husband also demanded alimony, plunging Joshua into a foreseeable future of financial woes. As for Susan, the mother-in-law, her days of mistreating her daughter-in-law had become the talk of the neighborhood. Isolated and looked upon with disdain, she faced her own set of social repercussions. Though I never revealed her actions to anyone, it seems her loud, spiteful remarks to me were overheard by others. Karma at its finest, is all I could think. My short-lived marriage was fraught with challenges, but it's over now. As I embark on the next chapter of my life, I'm determined to choose better and live joyfully, honing my instincts and trusting the right people.